All right, we are officially recording. Lubna is going to facilitate for us. I'm going to hand it off to my esteemed instruction colleague, Dr. Lubna Haq.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Tim. So hello, everyone, again, and welcome to the final instruction committee panel on the topic of online quality. My name is Lubna Haq, and I'm a member of the college's instruction committee. For those of you that don't know, the instruction committee is an elected group of faculty that pursue all things related to instruction and pedagogy at COD. We are charged with directing and maintaining the academic integrity of the curriculum and learning experience and provide recommendations to college leadership. Our motivation for scheduling these panels was to allow for faculty in our area, STEM, to have a conversation about what constitutes good quality instructional delivery in an online setting. While many groups across campus have given consideration to this topic, we think this is the first campus-wide opportunity to discuss this in a large group setting. I would like to welcome and thank each of our panelists for volunteering to talk with us today. As with all faculty panels that our committee facilitates, each of our guests will provide a 10-minute presentation followed by a Q&A conversation. So without further ado, I would like to hand it off to our panelists, which I'm going to introduce. Our first panelist is Jennifer Ann Hill, Professor of Mathematics, then Alyssa Pasquale, Professor of Engineering, and then Tom Carter, Professor of Physics. So off to you, Jen.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see. Let me queue up my presentation. Okay, can you guys see? We're all good? Okay, great. Okay, cool. So we're talking about quality here. And so I was trying to think about what that really means, or what things I felt like I could really share with you guys. So just to give you a little background on me. So I have been full-time faculty at COD since 2015. And I would say that presently I am really obsessed with the asynchronous experience. So I'm actually studying online education as part of my EDD. So I'm very familiar with the literature as it pertains to the community college setting, and I'm excited to share that with you guys. Additionally, I have created over 100 videos for McGraw-Hill and then over 200 for Pearson before I ever started making my own videos. And now I have created over 450 videos for my own classes. So when I was thinking about quality, I thought that I would talk about quality in kind of that online and asynchronous environment, and then also quality as it pertains to videos, or how to make them not suck, whether you're just choosing videos or whether you want to make them yourself. I'm going to give just some pointers on what I think constitutes as quality. So let's start with online and asynchronous learning. So I have this paper here, so I've got the citation. So this is a really cool paper that I read that I think really speaks to the idea of quality. So these two scholars went through and did a massive literature review on what constitutes quality in an online course. And through this literature review, they basically found like 4 buckets that were like your measures of quality. And so those 4 buckets were organization and how easy the course is to navigate, clarity of learning objectives and performance standards, technology is effectively used, and then strong quality interpersonal interactions within the course. So first they did this literature review, and then they took this whole like bucket of online courses and they rated how those online courses did on these 4 measures of quality. And then they took all of that information and tried to see if any one of these measures of quality is a greater predictor of student success. So things like passing the course. And I think what was super interesting with this study was that this last one, strong quality interpersonal interactions within the course, they found that this was the strongest tie to student success. And I think as STEM faculty, this is very interesting because I think even in our just face-to-face courses, this is something that we really struggle with. And I think it's even harder in the online environment because it's not like you can have, it's harder to have like discussion topics, right? So that's a big issue that we've kind of got. Now, where I'm actually going to start is I'm going to talk about how I view quality for these first 3 measures and how I implement those things. And then if you guys have questions, you want to talk about it, we can expand on that later. So the way I interpret those 3 objectives in my asynchronous classes, so I have a single document. Oh, excuse me. Pardon? Okay, so there is a single document that outlines deadlines, where to find things in the course, what sections we're going through. When I have video content for my courses, I try to keep that very engaging for the students. And like I said, I'm going to talk about video later. I incorporate active learning and metacognition activities throughout the semester so that it's very clear to the students what it is that I expect from them. And then I think a thing that really sets the tone for the semester is I have a welcome week series of videos. And in that first week, they have to take a quiz on the welcome week videos and the syllabus to demonstrate that they're very aware of kind of what I expect for this semester. And I want to be really clear about what my welcome week videos are. So I have one video about who I am and what I expect from them. I have another video where I actually walk them through what to notice in our Blackboard site. I have another video of how to take notes and upload those as a PDF because I think that that's not immediately obvious. I have another video where I give them a tour of our homework software. And really any other technology that we use in the semester, I have a video for it. And these are all separate videos so that the students can easily navigate and find what they need, because some of these things like how to take notes, I get a lot of questions on that. So I want them to be able to like very easily get to that information to review it if they need to. So those are kind of the things that I think really set the tone for the semester and make it very, very clear. So I get, after usually like the first week or 2, I don't get too many questions about how things work in the class because I set this up. Now, of course, do you have students that, you know, just kind of blow it off and they don't do anything? Of course, but I think on the whole, the students that really want to take this class, they really kind of get it and they feel pretty independent after we set this tone. Now, the hardest thing to deal with is this strong quality interpersonal interactions within the course, because that can just mean so many things. So I will kind of walk you through some of my own journey on this. So what I have considered kind of my more basic levels of interaction have been that welcome video I told you about. So I really want my students to know that I am not just somebody behind a screen, but I want them to get a sense of who I am so that they know, you know, I am a human being really here and interested in your guys' success. From that welcome video, I actually have a very low point extra credit introduction assignment where the students email me a couple things about themselves and I will email them back, but then we have a connection kind of established through the course of the semester. Of course, as the semester goes on, I post weekly announcements just to make it clear, like I'm very engaged in what they're doing in the course. And then another thing that I do is I have a Survey Monkey that I send out to the class usually once or twice over the course of the semester, just to ask how the class is going and to let it be anonymous. And I have found that that's been very helpful because that is a cue to the students, you know, again, that I really care about the quality of this course, but I've gotten some feedback from that survey that has really helped me to level up how I implement interaction in my courses. So students have said things like they wanted the ability to ask questions. They missed that in the online or specifically the asynchronous environment, which to me says like they're not going to tutoring and they're not emailing me with questions. And then other things like, you know, just lamenting feeling kind of isolated or socially distant. So students still have that need to connect with one another and have a community in the course. So from those things, this semester, I have implemented some other ways to get more interaction and try to create more community. So one thing I've done, and I've done this in the past, but I really was on top of it this semester, I email individual progress checkpoints to each student on how things are going. I actually do that after the first exam. And in that, I'll tell them, okay, here's your grade right now. Here's what you did on the exam. And then it might be, you know, keep up the good work, or, you know, you're in danger of failing, or I would like to see these things from you. But I send each student a very specific email of what things are going on, and students really feel like the investment in them and they really appreciate that. I've gotten a lot of good feedback about those emails. Another way that I kind of force more interpersonal interaction is I have started requiring tutoring in my asynchronous courses. And this is a pretty loose requirement. So they just have to go and ask one question. And it could be, you know, it could be to me, it could be to our course tutor, they could go to the Learning Commons, they can go for an hour, they can go ask one question, but they have to go and find those resources. Now, I've had some complaints about this from people saying, no, I don't have any questions, but I've had other students admit that they would have never sought out tutoring if it hadn't been required. So I think it's doing more good than harm. And then the other thing that I've been implementing to try to get more interaction is Discord. And I know that that's something we have like a faculty Discord for. So this is a communication platform that's really popular with our students right now because they like to use it for video gaming. If you've never seen it before, so I don't know if everybody's on the faculty Discord. So, okay, so it looks like this. So this is my calculus Discord. So it's really like a chat room where anybody can see the history of chats. So I have like a general question. So if somebody's confused about an assignment, they'll just post it and then anybody can see it. I have other channels over here on the left. You can see like for calculus questions or for check-in assignments. There's also things like voice channels. So you can have a voice-to-voice chat, or you could have, you can share your screen, or you do video conferencing. So that's kind of what Discord is if you haven't seen it before, but I really actually utilize Discord as a way to get more interaction. So at the beginning of the semester, I have a required introduction activity. And so then they can all kind of get to know their classmates. And then from that activity, I have a small amount of extra credit again to get them to meet their classmates, but they have to meet each other in a video chat form. And I found that this has been great for creating community because the students have formed study groups as a consequence of this. I also continued this semester to require check-ins with discussion prompts. And it's not like, how do you do this problem? It's more like, how is the class going? What are the hardest topics? How are you going to study for this exam that's coming up? So it's kind of a pain to grade these discussion prompts, but I have found that it has really created a lot of community in my asynchronous classes, because you might have a student that says, oh, I'm really struggling with this. And then you'll have, you know, since it's all in real time, students will start encouraging or saying, hey, I started doing this. So I think that that has really done a lot to increase my interpersonal interaction and get rid of that feeling of loneliness. And also I encourage students to DM or instant message me with just basic questions about the class at any time. I actually have Discord on my phone, so students can really message me at any time. And you might be listening to that and thinking, oh gosh, then, you know, when do you ever get a break? So my belief, at least for asynchronous teaching, it's not really a 9-to-5 job. If we don't have a meeting time, then I do expect that students are going to kind of just work on it whenever. But I don't get like a flood. I'm not getting messages, you know, all the time. You know, I still have, you know, my life. I get mostly pretty basic questions where students just need to be pointed in the right direction. And I find that by having that kind of attitude, it's created a much stronger connection to the class, and it's just kind of increased engagement. So all of that, that's kind of my thoughts on quality with the asynchronous environment. And now just very quickly, I want to talk about using video and making it not suck, because I have some thoughts on quality with this too. So regardless of whether you're making videos or whether you're using videos, all videos should be less than 20 minutes long. So even if you have a really complicated topic, then you want to break that up into smaller chunks. It's just very difficult for anybody to sit there and watch a 1-hour video and stay engaged with it. Now, when you are using video, whether again, you're making it or you're using someone else's, they should be interesting to watch. So having things like illustrations or using a pointer or writing out the work. So just not just rote reading off slides. And I highly recommend having activities associated with the videos, guided notes, worksheets, quizzes. You've got to force students to turn them in because they're really not going to do them otherwise. Students are kind of confused about how to use video and they don't know how to engage with it. So by having these activities, this gives students much more direction on what they need to pay attention to. And I've found that by requiring them to turn stuff in, it really gets them to engage more with the course. Now, if you wanted to make videos, I've just got some suggestions also on what makes quality, like do-it-yourself equipment. Of course, you need a computer or a tablet. I will say I love my Microsoft Surface for making videos. I think it has been such a great investment. Of course, you need something to write with, like PowerPoint, OneNote, whatever. Video editing software, there's lots of options out there. But I think something that's super underrated when it comes to video, you absolutely need to get an external microphone and some ways to soundproof. Now, soundproofing can be really subjective because it depends on the room that you're in, but getting an external microphone and soundproofing are going to make a huge difference. So this microphone that you see here, this one is the first external microphone that I ever used. It sounded so much better than my laptop. And if you took something like this and then just put it like in a little soundproof box, the sound in your videos is really going to pop. So these were just like little searches I did off of Amazon. You can also find like full kits like I found here. So these will make a huge difference if you decide to go the video route. And I will just show you now, I've done a lot of video at this point. This is my setup. So I have a pretty nice microphone. This is a Rode Podcaster. I have it mounted into a stand. And then from that stand, I have a shock mount. This has really done a lot for my sound. Now the box, I'm not gonna lie, this is a moving box. I then just lined it with foam panels. So it looks ridiculous and it makes it kind of weird to sleep in my guest room, but it sounds awesome. So it's made a huge, huge difference. And then from that, I upload my videos to YouTube. I actually have a video website where I've been organizing all my content. So you can see here just a little screenshot from my website. So for every video, I also have notes that goes along with it. And I've just found that's a really easy way to make it very clear to students kind of what I want them to turn in. So that's kind of what I've done, but there's lots of other ways we can do that. And you guys can ask questions about that or whatever, but that's what I've got.
Thank you, Jen. I think we'll hold off the questions to the very last, but next we are going to hear from Alyssa.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let me share my screen. All right. Let's see, it's my first time doing this from a Google presentation. So can you see why, how, and what? Great. All right, so thanks for inviting me to talk about online quality. So I just kind of want to start by mentioning two things that I realized had to happen when, or two things that kind of came to me when, we were presented with teaching online last year. And thing one that's motivated me is there's no such thing as perfect. And thing two that has motivated me is that nothing is sacred. So it's really caused me to think about these three questions. Firstly, why? Why did we used to do things the way that we did them? Because, when you get used to doing things a certain way, you almost think like, well, it has to be that way because that's just how we've done it. And then, the natural next question is, well, how can I do things differently? And, just because we've had to do things differently. And then, now that we're kind of into this for a year, we can start thinking about, well, what's going to actually help my students the most? So that's really kind of motivating everything that I've done. So I really want to talk about labs that I teach, because I think everybody can give you an opinion about how to do better lectures, but from a STEM perspective, the biggest challenge for me has been, how do I do labs? So I want to talk about first my gen ed physics class labs, and then my engineering labs, because they're completely different. I tackle them in very different ways. So I teach Physics 1100, which I love. It's a gen ed physics class. So these are students who might not be able to add very well, but they're interested in learning about physics and they have some really great ideas. It's a fully online class and I run it in a pretty asynchronous manner. The labs are 100% asynchronous. So in the before times, we used to give the students, they had the lab manual and before the lab, they'd do a pre-lab and then they'd go to lab and they'd tear out the sheet of paper and they'd turn it in. And they'd sit in a lab room for 3 hours with a lab partner, taking observations, getting things checked off, writing in their lab manual. They'd go home over the next week, do the lab homework, write things down. The next time they go into lab, tear the pages out of the lab manual, turn it in. So what I'm doing now is I'm giving students 1 week to do one assignment, all online. So what I did for physics is I'm taking everything and I'm squishing it into one assignment. So rather than getting caught up in, well, we used to do a separate pre-lab, a separate lab, and a separate homework. Now I found that it works best to just kind of do it all together. So there's a lot of benefits to this. Firstly, they're not tearing pages out of a notebook anymore. They don't see these things as being kind of like separate busy work, because I'm going to tell you the pre-labs, the students used to spend the 5 minutes before a lab started in the hallway, huddled together, copying each other's wrong answers and turning it in, because they kind of just saw it as like, here's an activity that I have to do because I have to do it. So now, because everything's in one assignment, it's almost like it's more meaningful. And because they have a whole week to do it, it doesn't really make sense to like have a separate homework. So I kind of have them take observations and then immediately analyze that, upload data, make a graph, interpret whatever they saw. So everything is I kind of think of it as a big squishing. Everything kind of got imploded together. So how I do this is, this looks busy, but it's really not that bad. The whole platform that I use for everything is Gradescope. So if you haven't used Gradescope, it's really great. I don't have time to really talk about it a lot, but if you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them here or at a different time. And with Gradescope, I can have what's called an online assignment. So I can write text, I can include images, I can have links to videos, I can even embed a video, I can ask short answer questions, multiple choice questions, I can have them upload things so they can take they can draw a picture, upload it with their phone, they can upload a data table, they can make a graph and upload the graph. So we can have it's just one spot where I can see kind of everything all in one place. So the activities that they do, that part has been a little bit of a challenge because, well, how do you do physics when you're not in a lab? Well, and then it's also further complicated by the fact that we've been kind of given permission from the ICCB to do simulated labs, but if we ever want to keep this online in the future, we need to have our online physics labs be like the students are actually getting data from something. So what I've been using for that kind of like ICCB compliant type of lab activity is I've been using Pivot. And with Pivot, what happens is over the last summer, I kind of brought a lot of lab equipment home and took videos in my kitchen, and I followed the nothing is perfect. There's no such thing as perfect mantra for that because, you know, I've got like a calorimeters and a logger, 3 laptops set up and video cameras, and you could probably see my pajama feet in a couple of them. But that's where, you know, all of the video comes from of me doing some type of a physics activity, and then the students log into their Pivot account and they can take data from it. And then certain things I use simulations, so things like PhET, and then I actually learned how to write my own simulations in JavaScript. I'm not going to say they're wonderful, but they work for some things that just didn't exist anywhere else. Then the students record their data in a Word document that's on Google Drive, and they upload it all to Gradescope. And then of course they're going to need help. We use Discord, email, and then I have like commonly like asked questions on Blackboard. So with Pivot, this is a picture of a rotational inertia apparatus on my kitchen table. That ruler, and there's a little like a timer that says 11.8 seconds, right? So what the students can do is they can step through the video and they can watch it as slow as they want. And they can time things. They can use rulers, and the rulers are calibrated. They can use protractor. So there's all these data measurement tools that the students can use. And the great thing about them is that the students have to place them themselves and interpret the data. They have to figure out when to start the timer and when to stop the timer. So it's as close as you can get to being in lab as possible. And this has really kind of been a great opportunity, although I did need to make videos on this stuff. It's a great way for students to gather information. So this is what I use for most of my actual activities, but it's not perfect. So firstly, it isn't free. There is pre-existing content, but your mileage may vary. So I at first I was just like, oh, I'm just going to use all of the built-in stuff. And then the students had this weird data, and then I tried it out. I'm like, yeah, I don't even like that video. So, you know, you kind of have to figure out what works and what doesn't. And then some things you just can't really do very well in Pivot. So other simulations that I've used, like I said, PhET, and then I've written my own in kind of looks like a kindergarten JavaScript kind of language. And not everything works in the Pivot environment. So I can't take data for everything, right? Some things have to be trial and error. Students still have to do some things themselves. So we have one thing where the students have to balance torques on 2 sides of a meter stick. If I do that for them in Pivot, then they're not learning anything. So the whole point is that they can use a simulation to place little masses on either side of a meter stick. So there's been some things that I just, you know, we just have to use PhET or something like a simulation that I create, and it still serves the students. So one thing that I noticed when I first started doing this like last fall is that, and over the summer, so this is like my 3rd time teaching an online 1100, is that the students kept making the same mistakes over and over and over again on their labs. And I leave them feedback, and I'm like, why are you doing this same thing over and over and over again? And they're not reading the feedback. So it was just like the before times when they'd get their lab back and they'd shove it in their backpack and never look at it again until they're cleaning out their backpack at the end of the semester. How do you motivate students to do things? You make points involved. So I take 2 points of their lab and I hold it hostage until they read through all their feedback in Gradescope and give me the code word that I've hidden in there. And it's a different code word every lab, and they have to find it in a different question every time. And I usually try to put it in a question that's like, I really want them to read the feedback about. And then I kind of realized that I was always leaving it on like a critical question. So every now and again, I'll put it in a question where I'm like, you did a great job on the lab, good work, or here's what you did well. So sometimes they're reading like, hey, you really need to figure out how to make a graph. And sometimes they're reading like, hey, this is, you did do this part really well. So they always kind of have to read that feedback. And I've noticed the quality of submissions has gone up a lot. So that's been a very good thing for me. Always got to find ways to motivate it, right? Otherwise, it's just, what benefits does it have the students? So in the completely opposite direction is my electrical engineering lab. So I teach hybrid, so I'm on campus, and we teach in-person labs with social distancing. And I know everybody can't wait to be back on campus, but I would like you to consider the following scenario. Consider that your students can't work together. They don't talk to each other, they don't know each other. They don't want to get close to each other because they're afraid of getting sick. There's not enough time to finish labs because they don't have lab partners anymore. They don't understand what's going on, and there may not be enough equipment for every student to use things without sharing. So it's a very real challenge teaching in-person labs. And part of this, I know this is an online quality panel, but I still have to integrate online into my in-person classes, even for the parts that we do in person, because the students cannot do what they used to do in a classroom anymore. So the before times, again, was exactly the same as with physics, with that pre-lab, lab, and homework. But instead of imploding, I've exploded. I've broken it into more steps, more parts to get feedback. So I'm opening the loop a little bit more. And the pre-labs now, they're not just an assignment that they turn in. It's part of, they're watching videos that I've made about lab equipment. How does this circuit work? When they're doing the lab, they're taking pictures of some things they're doing over and over again, like putting resistors in parallel. Okay, and I tell them, take a picture of this because you're going to do it next week, and I want you to be able to look at this picture. Or how do you wire a resistor in an LED? So I'm telling them to take pictures as they do things. And what they wind up with is they wind up with this big data set that they've got. They've got all these pictures on their phone, and because we're uploading all of the labs to Gradescope as a PDF, not only are they not tearing pages out of their lab manual, so they've got it all in their lab book, but they also have it all online with my feedback. So this isn't they shoved it in a backpack and lost it. They have it. So I can say, okay, go back to lab 7. We built this in lab 7. Take a look at that. Oh, okay. And they can see what they've done. So where there's more feedback, there's more like access to information, and it's been helpful for the students. And another thing is, because the students are uploading this information online, they can actually submit their lab right away, which means I can grade it right after they do it, before they start working on the homework. So I can give them feedback. Hey, you want to consider that you measured this thing wrong. So when you do the homework, this is the value that you should have gotten. And then it kind of, rather than something that they calculated wrong, leading them to bad conceptual understandings of things, I can kind of fix that before it becomes an issue. So it's been helpful. And I know Jen went into a lot more detail about this. Making videos has been very helpful. Jen has been a big inspiration to me, and I've asked her like a million times for questions. So I appreciate all of the help that she's given me. And I have a YouTube channel, and I get really inspired, and it's really fun for me to make these videos. And I think, oh, the students could benefit from a video on such and such. And the hard part has been kind of like, well, how do the students know about it? So I suggest that they subscribe to my YouTube channel, but also has been important is I make one tab on Blackboard. This is lab modifications. And I link, well, this is the video you should watch before you do this lab. And this is the change that we have to make because we don't have enough equipment, and so on and so forth. But it's been great. They'll watch these videos sometimes while they're in class. While they're in lab, I'll be sitting there grading something, and I hear my voice, and I realize it's because they're watching a video about how to use the oscilloscope because they've forgotten how to trigger it. So it's great, again, because they can watch these again and again and again and again, and I don't get frustrated about having to repeat myself a million times. So it's worked out really, really well. And the students, they definitely appreciate having these extra resources that they can use on top of just extra office hours and helping them in the other settings that I use. So that's, again, in a super fast kind of style of telling you what I've been working on for my labs. Clearly, I left a lot out just because of time. So if you've got questions, shoot me an email, or I'm also on the faculty Discord server. So feel free to send me a message there as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Alyssa. So now we are ready for Tom.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, let me just say two things. I should have checked with my two previous speakers to see what they were going to say. And then I should have checked to see if the provost was going to be in attendance, because I see him on there. Because let me just say, one of the themes of my talk is going to be, I'm going to show you what I do. And then I'm going to say in the end, I'm going to show you a couple of graphs where I'm not really sure we're providing the quality education I'd like to provide, right? So right after Jen Kelly just told me, you know, and Alyssa said what a great job they were doing and how this was all possible, I'm going to comment on it. Okay, so all our class, the class I'm going to talk about is an engineering level physics class. It's taught VCM. Physics sort of lucked out in that we got a lot of material, online material from the physics education group at Urbana, pre-existing quality short videos with embedded questions and all that stuff. It used to be free. Now the students have to pay a nominal amount because it's a commercial product, but we use that in all of our courses. Let's see, let me get this guy. Okay, I use Zoom. I just want to comment. I like the recorded format better. I found it more reliable. I have fiber optics right to my house, so I like the interface better. You know, to try to mimic the introduction that I normally have students come to my office for an introductory chat whenever I have a face-to-face class. I tried using Flipgrid. For those of you that don't know, it's available, learning technology. I did my own intro so my students could see it. And I asked my students to do it, but not everybody did. Some people just said, no, even if you give me points for doing this, I'm not going to do it. To mimic student interaction, the questions, I ask a question about every 10 minutes and the students during my lecture. My lectures are all synchronous. It's basically live on Zoom. About every 10 minutes or so, I'll ask a question and the students have to respond using the software called Reef. If you're not familiar with Reef, it's a great product. The nice thing is it sits, if you can sort of see it here, it sits on top of everything else you're running on your computer, so you don't have to leave your existing software. You don't have to leave Blackboard or Zoom to run it. It records the student's question or answers by student. And so I can tell, you know, how each student was doing on these questions. And I'll also say, and I'll talk about it in a bit, there are points where I'm relatively confident the students are not understanding what I'm saying. And so Reef is a good way of getting everyone to admit you didn't understand what I just said in the last 10 minutes. Feedback. We send email to all the students that are struggling. Whether that does any good or not, we have some data on that. That's another half an hour discussion. The student videos that they view, the students have a comment section, so they can tell me, hey, in this 15-minute video, I didn't understand this point. So then during the live lecture, I can then say 7 students told me they didn't understand why the squirrel fell out of the tree. We're going to go over it here. On the other hand, I can say, nobody asked me why the bird flew away, so we're not going to spend much time on the bird problems. I can view the student results in their pre-lecture questions. The students have to answer questions before they come to class, so I can see what they were prepared, what they were confused about before we start the lecture, before we start the synchronous part of the lecture. Student assistance, I have virtual, now here's the part where I'm going to confess that, maybe I'm not happy. I have virtual office hours. I sit for approximately 10 hours, 2 days a week in Collaborate. I've had about four students come to me during that time. I have a guided study group student tutor assigned specifically to my class. I've checked with her. She's had about 4 students come to see her. Students can get assistance from the math assistance area, which is how they used to get the majority of their assistance when we were face-to-face. The students used to go to the MAA and work together. In a 50-student class, I checked with the MAA. They've had contact with 19 students. So a little less than half of the class is going for assistance on the MAA. The students themselves have a Discord server. I'm specifically not invited. Carly Bennett had a similar situation, Carly Kopecki, and she actually invited herself and they booted her off. So what the students talk about on their own Discord server, we'll have to see. Okay, I think some things are actually better now that I try it this way. All my students are recorded, or all my lectures are recorded. And let me just say, what I record is my live lecture, right? Okay, so it's embarrassing. There's lots of M's and Ahs. And if I screw something up on the lecture, it's there permanently. In a previous class, a previous version of this discussion, somebody said they were concerned about what will happen if a parent looks over the student's shoulder and sees a really bad quality lecture. And I said, oh my God, I even thought of that. That's even worse. I'm worried about my students thinking I'm a bad lecturer. What if their parents see that? Right? We can record single complex examples. So it's very nice using a piece of software called Explain Everything. I can, an example problem, I don't have enough time to go over in tremendous detail in class. I can spend 17 minutes on it, on this specific example problem, talking about the strategy, talking about why we did it the way we did. And I never did this before. I will confess that, the pandemic has forced me to use methods I should have used before. Okay, this is ironic. In Zoom, the students seem much more comfortable asking me a question in chat, right? Instead of unmuting their microphone, they'll ask me a question in chat, and about 60% of the time, before I even notice that there's a question in chat, somebody will have answered it. So we have just an informal student-to-student lecture. I think that's great. That's something I wouldn't have in a face-to-face class, right? Okay, so here's my problem, right? Here's the part I'm going to confess. There are people that get PhDs in how to teach physics. It's a field called physics education research. And whether you want to believe in the PER, or some of the results, here's a fundamental issue that they brought up. Students don't come to your physics class as an empty vessel. Physics is about how you perceive the world around you. When the squirrel jumps out of the tree, why does the squirrel's flight behave the way it does? When you put a book on your table, what is involved with the book and the table? The problem is students come to the class already thinking they understand how the world works. And when you tell them something mathematically, or even try to tell it to them conceptually, it's very difficult to get them to admit, oh, that's different than my own worldview. Their own worldview is so heavily ingrained, it's very difficult to grab that worldview bring it in front of them and say, look, this doesn't agree with what your worldview is. So one of the problems with that, one of the ways we used to fix this was in lab. We would say, your worldview will predict X. You did it. Did X happen? No. Okay, so maybe your worldview is wrong. There's a problem with animated labs. If an animated lab disagrees with their worldview, they just easily say, well, it's an animation. You can make the Roadrunner do anything you want in a cartoon. Just because it disagrees with my worldview, that doesn't mean my worldview is wrong. So pivot-like labs that Alyssa was talking about are a different issue, but simulated labs that are actually a cartoon have a problem there. Student motivation. I don't know about you, but I get A+ students in my class, and they come to me at the end of the class and they say, oh God, Dr. Carter, you changed my world. You're the best instructor ever. Boy, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed your class. And in the back of my head, I'm saying, I could have had my dog teach this class and you would have gotten an A, right? You're an A+ student. You're a B+ student. So sort of my thought is, it's the D+ student that I'm always worried about. It's the student that if I didn't motivate them, if I didn't reach down and try to help them, they wouldn't learn enough. So I'm a physicist, so I had to show you at least one chart and graph. So here's the number of days that for every student in my class that they made no responses in my class. I don't care whether they logged on. I don't care if they were there. They didn't answer a single question. So I count that as they weren't there, right? They might have logged into Zoom, but they didn't respond using Reef. Here's their average in the class. Of the 40 students I have in my class, if you look at this area that's in this little orange graph, there's 8 of them here that were non-responsive 5 times or more. They missed 5 days of class. Of those 8 students, 1 of them is getting a transferable grade. All of those students have been sent personal emails from me, and they're still in that area. If it was a face-to-face class, I could do a much better job of talking to that student. And what's more, I don't think they would miss 5 days of my class. Okay, it came up in a previous version of this series. How do you know if the students are really watching your lectures, right? How do you know if the students are really watching your pre-lectures? Well, sort of good news, bad news. We in physics can tell using the pre-lecture system, using the commercially generated lectures we get from the Urbana group, from the physics education group at Urbana. Unknown to the student, I can tell the amount of time they spent viewing the pre-lecture and answering the questions. Okay, so it's about a 15-minute video. Here's the amount of time that they spent on the video. Notice this big peak here at 0 to 5 and 5 to 10. Those students are not watching the video. I give them points if they watch the video. All the students in this group are just saying, click on that slide, click on that slide. Oh, you're asking me a question. I guess the answer is A. It's not A. I guess the answer is B. It's not B. I guess the answer is C. Okay, I'm done. So of the 50 students in the class, 42 of them logged on to watch the pre-lecture. Only 23 of them spent 10 minutes or more watching a 15-minute video. So these students are not using the resources I'm trying to provide them. I would look and say, these are some of the D+ students I could reach out to if I was face-to-face. I worry that these students I'm not going to be able to motivate them. And so now, right after Jen Hill told us, you know, how this was all possible and she was doing a great job, I just confessed right in front of Jen and the provost that I'm not doing a great job. So, okay, that's it. And I got 2 charts and graphs in.
Yes. Well, thank you all again. I really appreciate all of you guys sharing such important information. Jen, very good point on the interpersonal interaction as needed for online teaching, and videos are really cool the way you're making them. Alyssa, really good point on the labs. And I'm with you when we're not collecting paper, and today is Earth Day. So way to go. This is perfect timing for Alyssa's presentation on how online labs and simulations are helping us. And of course, Professor Carter with the chart analysis, debunking all of the analysis that we have for our students. I think we are somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, we are trying our best as instructors and providing the best resources for our students. Sometimes they take the advantage of all of that, sometimes they don't. I think that's what we are. So I'm going to head to the chat and start asking the questions that are there. There's a question from Richard Jarman. I have noted too the extreme drop off of patronizing of the GSG tutor. I know some of us have the GSG tutors. Is this correlated with the current situation or just a coincidence? So either one of you three are welcome to jump in with your analysis.
I guess I don't know what you mean by patronizing the GSG tutor.
GSG is, but it's guided study group.
Yeah, I've got one. I just don't know what.
Do your students go and ask your GSG tutor a question?
Mine do, and that's because my GSG is, so like I said, I require tutoring. And so my GSG is in my Discord channel. So for those students that just want to get the tutoring out of the way, sending a DM to the GSG is probably the fastest way to get it. But I think that that's not necessarily, I think it sets like the right expectation, because they kind of learn then, like when they have a question, they can just at any time. And that's exactly what I want in an asynchronous environment, I guess, is if, you know, oh, I'm working on this really hard topic right now and I don't get this, and I just need to, you know, talk it out with someone. The fact that they know, oh, I could just message this GSG at any time and he'll respond, that I think that's been good. But yeah, I mean, to me, like the way I've best gotten tutoring out there is by requiring it. Like that to me is like there, otherwise like there's just a big inertia issue, I think, with being online and again, us not being with them. So I think even requiring tutoring like twice a semester and just keeping it a low requirement, once students kind of know that it's out there, you know, that's in the back of their mind. Is it going to help everybody? No, it's not. And I think we know like online doesn't work. I mean, I can share a lot of research about the online student. So it's definitely not for everybody, right? You've got to be an independent self-starter. And there are things you can do to motivate them to become a self-starter, but there's going to be, I think, just a subsection of students that are just not going to do well in this online environment. It doesn't matter how much you email them, how many resources you provide. Like I've had some students say like, my home situation is chaos. I cannot focus at home. So, I mean, there's nothing that I can do then for that student to help with that. And I think we have a lot of students that are in that situation too. So, I mean, I think it's good that we're going probably back to face-to-face for some students.
I have a question, Lubna. I hope you don't mind if I jump in here. So this is the 6th and final panel that the instruction committee has held. And it's been fascinating to see, like, one of the outcomes, I think, of all these panels is like how different the needs are of faculty and how different our sort of tools and tactics are in delivering our course content. You know, coming from English, a very, very different field than those of you in STEM, this was sort of eye-opening to see some of the resources you're using. And I found it one of the common themes, though, amongst all of these panels was the sort of efforts we're trying to make to get students engaged in discussing with each other in an online environment. It's not as easy to just replicate that discourse that happens naturally in the classroom. And so I think it's fascinating that all three of you reference Discord. We've only had one other faculty member in all of the panels, Steve Santello yesterday in CIS, who uses Discord with his students. So I'm wondering if you guys can talk. Tom, you're probably incapable of addressing this because your students don't let you into the Discord server. But I'm wondering if you guys can talk at all about like how your students are using that. Are they using it for chit chat? Are they using it to sort of talk about class and assignments? Are they learning from each other? Because like, I think a lot of faculty have expressed that using the old fashioned discussion board method just isn't suitable and not very productive. So I love Discord and the fact that like you can use it on a phone and it's mobile friendly. So like, how do you see your students using that?
So you got to notice firstly, I knew it was going to be the CIS guy, right? Because it's all the nerds, and all of our students are already nerds. So actually, like, remember the Thursday we got the email at 6 p.m. saying, okay, Friday's going to be our last day. So Friday I went into my digital systems class. I'm like, guys, I don't know what to do. And they're like, Discord. So my students taught me about it, which was great because they were already using it, which means they were going to use it. So the students I find, mostly send DMs, so direct messages. They'll direct message me at 3 in the morning, like, hey, I'm working on question 4 on the pre-lab and I'm not really sure how to do such and such. But in my circuit analysis class, these are the kids who know each other the best because they've been at COD already for 2 years. They're the ones who will go into my circuit analysis channel and they'll say, hey, anybody working on the pre-lab right now? And then I'll get other students who will pipe in and say, yeah, I'm struggling with that too. And sometimes they'll go over to the voice channel and they'll start talking to each other. I have a drop-in session. I have a drop-in tutor for my digital systems class, an engineering class, and he will go on the voice channel during his drop-in sessions, and I can see all the students who are, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 students that are listening to him explain stuff. And I don't pop in when he's doing it because when the tutor and the professor are in the same room, everybody ignores the tutor and goes to the professors. But they will also ask me to pop into the voice channel during my office hours. And then I can share my screen. I could draw a circuit diagram and I can ask them, okay, well, what happens to this capacitor, or what's the truth table for this? So they've, and I can't say, no, I'm with Tom, right? I'm sitting in my home office for 10 hours and 15 minutes I'll actually interact with the students. But a lot of it tends to be that asynchronous kind of asking at 3 in the morning, how do we do this? How do you do that?
Yeah, I kind of agree with some of that. I mean, I feel like if you teach something that's asynchronous, or if you're teaching online, like the office hours kind of go out the window. So I get a lot of those 2 a.m. messages too. And the students, like, they don't expect you to answer like at that time, but they just, oh, I have this thought right now and I don't want to forget. So they really kind of appreciate that connection. And most of the time it's like, I don't know what this question is talking about. Which section should I go looking for? They just want help, like getting directed to a resource or something. Yeah, I think last semester I had a little bit more interaction on my Discord. I had a couple of students that really asked a lot of questions on Discord. I think this semester I have more students that just formed their own study groups and made something offline, which I'm fine with. Like, as long as I'm fine with my students creating their own community and supporting one another. So I tend to get more DMs this semester. I think it's kind of just however the personality of the class emerges. But I do think that the check-ins have been, like I said, very cool, because I can't ask like a typical discussion prompt like you would in, I don't know, like some of the other fields, what was this article about, or the implications of it. Like, what can I ask them? Like, how do you use the chain rule? I mean, like, they have homework on that, right? So it wouldn't make sense to do that. So instead, I find that just having like these moments of what's going well in the class, what are you struggling with, it really kind of gets everybody to understand, like, this is a hard class and this is a big ask. This is a 5-credit-hour class. This is going to take you a long time. Like, a lot of people kind of go in thinking, oh, I'm going to spend way less time on this class because I don't have to go to lecture. And it's like, probably not. Actually, it's probably going to be the opposite. And having them all kind of come to those conclusions and realizing, like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me because I'm spending so much time on this, because they're all like having these check-ins and talking about that and saying, oh, I'm really struggling to find the balance, or here's how I've been doing it, or whatever. I think it's helped them out a lot. So yeah, I think Discord has been very useful to just get them to interact with one another. But I also find, like, forcing them to use it and have like things like check-ins, even though it's a pain to grade, I think it's been so much more worthwhile for creating community in my classes. And then they'll go off and, like I said, they'll make their own study groups or whatever. And I'm fine with it. I'm fine if they don't have conversations in front of me, so.
Thank you, Alyssa and Jen. I do agree that it's when I think one of you mentioned that the office hour timings, the restrictions of that is definitely not something that we could abide by or the students abide by, right? I mean, we're getting emails, we're getting inquiries in the middle of the night whenever they're on session, but personally, I feel like that's the beauty about the asynchronous learning, that each and every student, if we can find and have a manageable system that we can cater to their need, yes, they are more successful. And that will take me to Tom Ruman's comment that he sees, that's what I'm gonna refer to. Yes, my students' grades are higher and retention is higher in this remote learning format, but I wonder if these students are really learning as much as the face-to-face students did. I also wonder how much of the cheating is contributing to this improvement. So I would like you to comment on this. Either one of you can go first.
So there's been research done on this actually, and it's a fact that online learning, if you have the exact same students and you have face-to-face versus online learning, so the CCRC has already done research on this, you will have your online students maybe get a slightly lower A than the face-to-face students. So we know that they don't retain it as well because it's a much bigger ask.
Alyssa, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't have a good answer to that, right? Because I think it's something we're all really struggling with.
Right.
I have to say that as far as cheating, I've been really talking about labs today. So as far as labs go, the good thing about teaching a gen ed physics class is I know when students are cheating because it's really obvious. These are students who struggle to convert grams to kilograms, right? So when they start writing about higher level things in a physics lab, I mean, I know that they've gotten it from another source. And it's really kind of hard to cheat on some of the stuff like the graphs and the pivot activities. I mean, I guess they could be hiring somebody to do the lab for them, but I don't really see a lot of, what I do see is still what I saw when I taught face-to-face, which is two students work together and they write down the same wrong answers. And I'm like, why? You guys need to stop working together because you're not, there's no synergy here. And then as far as the in-person labs go, I mean, it's I can tell when they can't build a circuit, right? Because I'm there watching them do it. So, but as far as like, well, the exams and stuff, I have, the students will type in an answer, but then I want them, they have to take a picture of their work and upload it. And I found that the grades went down when I asked them to do that. So was there some cheating happening this semester? I didn't ask them to take a picture of their work, probably. But I think that having them actually show their work, you can start to see the things that you would have seen in a classroom where, you know how students write the same wrong things in the same spot on the page and they both rectangle it or they both circle, like they write it down in the same way. So like you can see those things too when they're doing it together online. And it's not foolproof. And are they retaining this stuff? I mean, I don't have that answer, but I think there's still ways that we can kind of sanity check things just like we used to in the before times.
So I have I think as far as like cheating goes, so I also try to, so I have proctored exams and I have found that gets the grade distribution for at least what I expect for an exam. It's about in line with my face-to-face courses. And I feel like all the other things I've put in, like forcing guided notes, I feel like I am getting now the same distribution of grades that I had in the face-to-face environment. But the cheating thing, so I do have quizzes every week. And so that's kind of like a high stakes thing in some ways. And so what I've done to try to prevent cheating is, again, in my Welcome Week series of videos, I talk about the quizzes. I give them multiple attempts for the quizzes because I don't want them to cheat. I want them to learn. And, if I can't proctor it and it's something that's worth, more points, the students are, I feel like if you give them one attempt, that is a huge incentive. That's a high pressure situation.
Right.
they are going to probably cheat. So instead, I actually give them 3 attempts, and the problems change each time. But I set up this expectation of like, I expect you to not get 100% on them. They're going to be hard quizzes, and you get 3 attempts, and you can go back and you can improve, and you can use this as a checkpoint. And on the whole, I don't have like a whole thing of all the students getting 100% on them. I mean, I get a lot of students that are, I think, getting maybe slightly higher grades than they would have. And I don't know if that's necessarily because they get more attempts. But I feel like that has actually done a lot to contribute to lessening the cheating. Is, I've given you 3 attempts, so you need to kind of meet me halfway on this. I think when you make it very clear and you emphasize to the students what the point of this is, and you really expect integrity from them, they will on the whole meet you. Of course, you're always going to have people that are trying to buck the system, but I think when you have those conversations and you give them those multiple chances, a lot of them will not waste it.
I think part of this is the nothing is sacred, right? We have to rethink, why were we doing things the way we were doing, and can we do them differently? And there are some things logistically, students have to upload pictures of their work. That takes a long time. I have to give them twice as much time on exams as I used to before their access and accommodations, right? So like, we can't, I started out being really rigid, like, no, I'm not going to give you extra time. You have to get this uploaded. And now I'm like, no, I need to give them more time. It takes longer to do things. And maybe like, like Jen said, we give them more attempts. And, I've had students get sick, their whole family get sick. So how do we take the pressure off of one grade? Can we average things? If they miss one thing, how are we going to make that up? So taking the pressure off is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Well, I wanted to jump in here and say that my clock reads 1:02, so that means we have gone for 60 minutes, and I'd like to be respectful of people's time. And I also think that what Alyssa and Jen just talked about, that nothing is sacred, constantly reflecting, figuring out what works in a new modality, is a really nice way to end. This has been a fascinating conversation. I want to just take a quick moment, for those of you that are still here, to thank the panelists. Tom, he had to run to class, but Alyssa and Jen, thank you so much for volunteering to do this. I know you didn't have to. I know how busy we all are, and the fact that the 2 of you guys planned for this and set aside some time to do that, I really, really appreciate it. I also wanted to thank my instruction colleagues, especially Lubna, for facilitating this today. And this has been a fun series to do. This is it. We'll get this final video posted. And then if you guys have ideas for other types of panels you would like to see, I think this is something that the instruction committee is certainly going to continue. We've been doing this for 2.5 years now, and we've enjoyed doing this. And so if you want to have more conversations with your colleagues in your discipline or beyond, please reach out to your instruction colleagues and let us know. So without further ado, thank you all for being here. Best of luck as the semester winds down, and hopefully we'll see you all in the flesh very, very soon. So
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you guys. Take care. Bye.